Hello, welcome to Library Connection. I'm Mandy Cantrell, Youth Services Director at the B.B. Comer Memorial Library here in Sylacauga. Before I get started with the program, I want to thank TV47, Chris, Robert, everyone who helps us put this program on. I'm very excited about today's program too. I want to tell you about it. Sandi Herron is joining me today. She has just written a book called Harvest, Recipe Stories and Memories of a Southern Family Heritage. And it is about cooking, but it's also about preserving your family history. So that's what we're going to talk about mostly today. Thank you, Sandi, for joining me.
Thank you for allowing me to be here. I'm excited to be here.
Good. I want to hear your story. We've talked some before, and I've heard some of it. But before we get started, tell us about yourself. Are you from here in Sylacauga?
I am from Chelsea. We live in Chelsea, and I was born in Mississippi, but I was raised in Alabama.
Good.
I have strong connections in both states through my family. Wow. But back in 1988, my husband and I, with our two children, decided to make Chelsea our home. Oh, good. So now that's what we call home.
That's close. That's very close to us.
We love Chelsea.
Oh, I know you do. That's wonderful. Well, I know your book has, I know you must love to cook. I know that we're going to talk about that too, but a lot of what is in your book is stories. I tell you, I haven't read the whole thing yet, but I read part of this. It's stories and family history and things like that. When did you decide to study your family history, or is it something you've done always?
Well, when I was a little girl, I used to sit on the sofa beside my grandparents because I loved to hear their stories. And so I would sit there and ask them questions. I was just so curious and wanted to know. And so a lot of the stories came from them. Oh. And the more that I learned about their stories, the more I wanted to know about our extended family. Okay. You know, where did we come from, and how did it all begin? So that's, always been a part of my life.
Right, wow. Well, I know I've not done a lot on my family, but I know it is a lot of work. You don't just you don't just go to one website and find everything you need. How would somebody get started, and how did you get started collecting all of this?
Well, back in 2000, my mom and my aunt, let me preface that by saying this, my mom and my aunt, every year at Christmas, they start in January making something as a gift, a homemade gift for their family.
Wonderful.
In fact, one year, my mom made 17 quilts. Oh. Now, she did not have a quilting machine, so everything was cut and done by hand, all the stitching, and 17. So that's just something they would do every year. They would decide in January, this is what we're going to do for our Christmas gifts this year. But one year, after she had worked and worked for months, she asked me about putting together a binder with the old photos from our family.
Oh, good.
And so we got started on it, but it was a much bigger project than both of us thought it would be. But we started documenting the photos and putting them together in a binder, and we didn't make it for Christmas.
Right.
So it kind of got put aside, and we worked on it off and on. And then, unfortunately, she passed away in 2008, and I had never finished the book. And so it just kind of got put in a drawer.
Life gets busy. I know, things going on.
Yeah, it did. But then in 2019, I decided it was time to get started on it again. Good. And so I pulled it out of the drawer after talking with my aunt, who was at that time, had just turned 83. And we decided to work together and put it together. So not only my mom she did a great thing when she documented for me the photos, telling me who they were in the photo and where it was taken, and just all the little details that she gave me made a big difference.
It does, and that's so hard to do for me.
It was, and where her dream was to see all the photos and some of our family recipes put together in a binder with plastic sheets and all that. When I started working on it, I had a little bit of a different vision of it, and it then evolved into being what it is today.
Wow, this is a cookbook with pictures and stories, and such a treasure for your family.
Yes.
Your children, your grandchildren.
Yes.
I know.
Yes, it is, and that was what I had in mind, and that was what my mom had in mind early on. I am a writer, and so I love stories, and I love to tell stories, and so not only did I collect the recipes, and the recipes was the hardest part of the book.
Oh, really? Huh.
Because it was a little bit of this and a little bit of that, a pinch of this and a pinch of that.
Right.
Most of them written on old scraps of paper that my mom or someone may have pulled out of their purse
Yes.
at a Sunday dinner, church dinner, or a holiday dinner.
Yes.
And someone brought a recipe in, and
Oh, goodness.
you know, and oh, I want that recipe. So
Can you jot it down?
yeah,
for
and
me?
they would jot it down, and I think back in that day, Mandy, they took it for granted that people knew how to cook.
true.
So many of the recipes were written without instructions.
Oh, I would be lost.
I knew that, and so I had a lot of work to do in giving not just butter, but how much butter.
Right.
Vanilla, I had to say, okay, how much vanilla
Is it a
do we
teaspoon?
need in
Yeah.
this?
Oh, yes.
And
That makes
then
all the difference.
write the instructions to go with it.
That's a lot of work. But
It was a tremendous amount of work.
You did a lot of cooking during that time.
I did a lot of cooking.
A lot of trial and error.
I did. We did.
How fun. I'll tell you, this is so much fun. We're going to pause for a commercial break, and we'll be right back and talk some more with Sandi.
Experience the 14th Annual Sylacauga Magic of Marble Festival, April 5th through the 16th. See sculptors from around the world at Central Park. This year's featured sculptor is Francesco Gazzi. Take part in the marble scavenger hunt beginning March 25th. Register for a quarry tour. Explore the B.B. Comer Memorial Library sales and marble rooms. For more information, go to magicofmarblefestival.com or call 256-249-0961. Come experience the magic of marble.
Marble City Pharmacy in Sylacauga is your destination for the highest quality health care. Our knowledgeable pharmacists are always available for questions about your medications or advice on taking over-the-counter products and supplements. Our friendly staff can assist you in choosing from our full lines of compression hose and medical equipment. And don't forget our gift department. We have a great selection of unique gifts for every occasion. Stop by and see us today. Marble City Pharmacy, here for life.
Coosa Valley Medical Center, one of the top 10 hospitals in Alabama, is also Sylacauga's largest employer. Services from the emergency room to surgery to cancer treatment to post-stroke care. You won't believe what's right in your backyard. It's Coosa Valley Medical Center in Sylacauga. So, if you're sick in Alabama, choose one of the top 10 hospitals in Alabama. That is Coosa Valley Medical Center.
Welcome back to Library Connection. I'm talking with Sandi Herron, who has done a lot of research with her family and written a wonderful book. We've got so much to talk. I'm not going to spend much time myself, so much to say. How did you get started, and what did you use to research your family history besides stories and things like that?
Well, when I first began, I took all of the stories that I had been told and I had listened to on the front porch on Sunday afternoons throughout my life. Sundays were meant for visiting with family, and so we did a lot of that. And I would listen to those stories, even as a young girl. I would listen to the stories. But as I began my research, I had to know that facts were true. And so I would listen to someone tell me a story, and I did a lot of interviewing. And because of the pandemic during this time, most of my interviews took place over the phone.
Okay, yes.
I spent a lot of time asking questions over the phone to people I had never met in person. But when I would find out that someone in Mississippi, for instance, knew my grandparents when they were in their younger years, then I found a way to get in touch with them.
Oh, goodness.
And got their stories. But as far as online sites, the genealogy sites, I relied heavily on those sites, and the census was so important to me because I learned early on, Mandy, that on genealogy sites that I could go in there and put someone's name in, and but is that a fact? So I had to know that everything was a fact. And so I would look at the census and verify the names and the ages and the dates. There was so much that I gathered from the census report that
and that would be verified, maybe.
It was. Yes. It helped me to verify. One funny thing, it's funny now, it wasn't at the time, but one of my great-great-grandmothers that came out of South Carolina, and I was on a genealogy site, and I found her, and I was so excited. And so I started running that trail, and all of a sudden I found her in Missouri. And then I'm thinking, well, I don't know how she got to Missouri, but she's supposed to be in Mississippi.
Right.
And but I researched more, learned more about her family, wrote some wonderful, spent several months writing the stories about my grandmother in Missouri and learning about her family, her sisters. And I thought, something is just not clicking here. Right. But I did have my DNA done. Oh, and that helped me do a connection. And it did not connect me. And so I had to backtrack and realize that her name was Mary Jane. She was out of South Carolina. She was a Morgan. So Mary Jane was a very popular name, and there were a lot of Morgans. And this Mary Jane and my grandmother, Mary Jane, were born around the same time. But where my grandmother came to Mississippi, this one went to Missouri, so I had to backtrack. So I always caution everyone on the genealogy research to know that you are going after the right one, and DNA helps a lot with that. And also, just because it's out there on a genealogy site doesn't make that a fact. You have to confirm it. The census will help you to confirm that.
Gosh, that is a lot of work, I know.
It was a lot of work, hours and hours of work, 2 years of research.
Oh, goodness.
It took that long because I wanted to confirm. I wanted, before anything went in my book, I wanted to make sure that my facts were correct. I have one great-great-great-great-grandfather who is Peter Hedrick, and we know that he came out of North Carolina.
Okay.
And my DNA connects me with him. Right. But there's still one little thing missing. And so he didn't make the book, but he will the next one.
It'll be, yes, for the next one. That is great. Well, I know it's very difficult, I guess it is hard, but you have a passion for this, so you're working hard, maybe enjoying it, and you're a writer. If anybody wants to get started looking at their genealogy, the library is having a genealogy research series. There was one January 14th. There's one coming up March 11th on Introduction to Genealogy, Researching Military Records, Computer Research. So please call the library if you'd like to come to that. Seating is limited due to COVID. We want to social distance, but we'd love to have you come. Something like that would help you get started on this project just like this one. That is exciting. Well, I know you sent, before we get into the slides, you talked about your that you had cancer, and that kind of motivated you to want to complete this project. Can you talk about that?
Yes, it did. Like I said earlier, my mom and I started documenting the photos back in early 2000. And the book was put aside, and life just got busy. I was a caregiver for not only my mom, but also my in-laws for several years. And so it was in 2018 that I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I went through surgery. I went through, aggressive chemo, lost my hair, went through all of that, and then radiation. And I just happened to be in 2019, after I'd finished the treatments, and it had been over a year, and I was with my aunt, who was 83 at the time, and we were talking about memories. And I was on my way home from the luncheon I'd had with her, and it just dawned on me that if this book was ever going to be finished, that it had to be the then and now. I could not put it off any longer, because I think if cancer taught me anything, is don't take tomorrow for granted, and don't put off the things that you really need to do that can make a difference for your family or for other people.
You're so
And
right.
that is what really, I was inspired by my mom back in 2000, but I was definitely motivated by the cancer journey to finish things that I had started. And thankfully, I'm doing great. I'm here today. And,
I'm so glad.
you know,
That's wonderful. It's so sad that I don't know about you, but for me, it might take something like that to make me put this down for my children or grandchildren.
well, that is my hope, and that is my desire, to inspire others
Yes.
to research, to learn your stories, because your stories matter. There was so much that I learned about my grandfather and my other ancestors through my research that if I had not done this, they would have been lost forever. Because some of the people that I spoke with and I interviewed, my aunt now is 85, and one of the most valuable people that I spoke with, her name is Mary Margaret. She lives in Mississippi, and she's a few years older than my aunt. But she lived across the road. Her family owned the farm across the road from my grandparents when she was a little girl. And because of her still staying in touch with my aunt, I was able to call her, and we spent hours daily, day after day. And I learned really early on that no question should be considered unimportant.
Okay.
And she told me, one day I asked her, she was talking about her father that passed away on Christmas Day. And we talked about that. And I said, Mary Margaret, what did you wear to your dad's funeral? And she said, oh, I do remember. She said, because your grandmother made it.
I read that story.
Yes.
I'm going to cry if we talk about it, but that is the sweetest story.
A Christmas gift of love.
Yes.
If I had never started this research, Mandy, I would have never known that side of my grandfather and what he did. I always knew he cared for people,
Right.
but he gave so much of himself to those around him and to his neighbors, and he was a good neighbor. But here is Mary Margaret and her brother, who is a little older than she is, and so that they're probably around 90-ish. But to this day, they have never forgotten what my grandfather did. So that's why your stories are important, because find your stories, document your stories, and you may not do it like I did, but at least journal the story, journal your information, preserve your information, because it may not be everybody in your family that wants to know, but there's going to be someone that is so important. And so I'm so thankful that I have all the stories that I did.
so glad.
In fact, I had so many stories that only about 25% of the stories made it into the book. So I'm
have
being-
more stories to write.
There are a lot more stories to tell.
Oh, what a treasure for your family. We're going to pause for another commercial break, and we'll be right back and talk some more with Sandi and look at some pictures.
Experience the 14th annual Sylacauga Magic of Marble Festival, April 5th through the 16th. See sculptors from around the world at Central Park. This year's featured sculptor is Francesco Gazzi. Take part in the marble scavenger hunt beginning March 25th. Register for a quarry tour. Explore the B.B. Comer Memorial Library sales and marble rooms. For more information, go to magicofmarblefestival.com or call 256-249-0961. Come experience the magic of marble.
Marble City Pharmacy in Sylacauga is your destination for the highest quality health care. Our knowledgeable pharmacists are always available for questions about your medications or advice on taking over-the-counter products and supplements. Our friendly staff can assist you in choosing from our full lines of compression hose and medical equipment. And don't forget our gift department. We have a great selection of unique gifts for every occasion. Stop by and see us today. Marble City Pharmacy, here for life.
Coosa Valley Medical Center, one of the top 10 hospitals in Alabama, is also Sylacauga's largest employer. Services from the emergency room to surgery to cancer treatment to post-stroke care. You won't believe what's right in your backyard. It's Coosa Valley Medical Center in Sylacauga. So, if you're sick in Alabama, choose one of the top 10 hospitals in Alabama. That is Coosa Valley Medical Center.
Welcome back to Library Connection. I'm talking with Sandi Herron about preserving family history, and we're going to get right into the slides that you sent me of your family and some things y'all were doing together. I think your granddaughters are in some of those.
Yes.
There. Okay. Who is that?
Okay, that is my oldest granddaughter, Katie, and we are making buttermilk biscuits.
Oh, good.
Made
good.
from scratch. And that is my youngest granddaughter, Taylor, and we are making old-fashioned tea cakes.
Tea cakes.
And both of those recipes are in the book, and they are made like my grandmother. In fact, that rolling pin that you saw there was my grandmother's.
Oh, how I bet you made tea cakes with her, did you?
I did, most definitely, yes.
Sweet, and there they
That
are.
is our tea cakes.
They look good.
And they are good.
They're so delicious.
And that is the way that I do my buttermilk biscuits, like my grandmother did, in a iron skillet, rolled in my hand and put in the skillet.
Okay.
And that is my Katie bringing one out, and she is ready. She's got it buttered and ready to eat.
I bet these girls will be good cooks.
That is my youngest grandson, Jacob. They live in Virginia, but he is looking at the book, and my daughter-in-law is from the country of Columbia, so she's learning all about this Southern food. It's really great.
That's good.
It's so
Oh, how fun!
Yes.
And
that is me. This is Christmas after all my chemo and radiation and all that, and I let my granddaughters tattoo my head because I told them, you can do it now because you'll never see this bald head again. I did my best to make the journey not all sad, and it was a hard journey, but I did things with my granddaughters and my family to make them a part of it.
That's great.
Because that's one thing I learned about cancer journey. It's not just about the person going through, but it impacts the entire family. And the cancer journey became part of my story, and that I have written about. And so it's important for, I guess one thing is, I want to tell my story. I don't want someone down the road to try to decide, how did she feel about this or how did she feel about that? And so writing my stories, even the things that happened today, and I encourage everyone to journal. Write your stories. Write how you feel about the simple things. I ask people often, what's your favorite color?
Oh, really?
Yeah, and of course my granddaughters know that my favorite color is green because it's the color of life.
Oh,
and I love that. And so I always ask people that, what's your favorite color?
Generally, there's a story behind that, right?
There is.
Oh,
there is, and just the simplest of questions can either make people think about their stories, or bring back memories.
That's wonderful. Now, up on the screen now are some old photos.
Yes, I have a lot of old photos, and those look pretty good now, but when I first started working, I had to go in and do a lot of editing and restoration.
Oh,
And and that's just a collection of the things my mom, her cookie jar, my great-grandmother holding my mom in her lap with her other two, with her sister and a cousin. And this is us now carrying on the tradition of our family. We are still farmers.
Oh,
we
good.
grow our own food, and we grow clean food,
Yes.
no chemicals
That's
or anything.
right.
And I still preserve
Yes,
our
you
food.
do.
That
That's a
was
lot.
just the beginning of the green beans that
Oh, my
we
goodness.
preserved. And quilters. These are some of the old quilts made by my family, and everything was made by hand. That quilt right there was a quilt that my great-great-grandmother made with my grandmother when she was 9 years old, and then it has continued through 6 generations.
What a treasure.
Yeah, it is.
To have those. Those are beautiful.
So all the little stitches and everything, and they were made with love and still keep us all warm today.
And by hand,
By
every
hand.
single stitch.
And the cotton that was in these quilts came from our family farm in
Oh, my
Mississippi.
goodness. Yeah. My mother picked cotton too, so I can
That's right.
relate a little bit. I've heard her stories of that.
That's right.
Wow, that's
It was hard on the hands.
Oh,
and
I think so.
The stickers and all that, but they did it. And their quilts then were real heavy because they were intended to keep you warm. It wasn't as much how it looked, but they were very creative and did beautiful work, but it was more about keeping you warm.
It was a necessity. Yes.
It was. The homes back then did not have the insulation like we know today.
Right.
So,
Gosh. Well, that is so exciting. I know your grandchildren may or may not appreciate it now, but they will. I know, and they probably do now because they've seen you go through this process of collecting all of this.
yes, it's been a journey and a lot of questions, a lot of reading stories.
I bet,
Would you
I
read
bet.
this from reading it from my 15-year-old granddaughter's point of view?
That's true.
I wanted her to read it and see. And so we
Well,
did that.
I am just so thrilled that you were able to be here today and talk about your book and about how to collect family history. Please sign up for one of the genealogy research series classes at the library if you can, and come check out Sandi's book, Harvest: Recipes, Stories, and Memories of a Southern Family Heritage. So many good stories in here. I'm not a big cook, so I'm reading the stories mainly, but the recipes too. But thank you so much for joining me today on
Thank you,
Library.
Mandy. I enjoyed being here with you.
Good. And thank you for joining us on Library Connection.